All right, to the White House right now. The president is discussing his budget right now. You might recall that in his address to a joint session to Congress last week, he had talked up the possibility of adding $54 billion to the defense budget, and he would pay for that by cutting the budget at the State Department and the Environmental Protection Agency. Something that was at the time a little bit of news to the new incoming Administrator Scott Pruitt. I don't know what success he's had maybe changing the president's mind on that. He joins us out of Houston right now, a big energy confab going there. There is a bit of a delay, sound delay here with the secretary, so I don't want to surprise you with that, or the EPA Administrator. So, sir, well, good to have you. Thank you for coming.
Good to be with you, Neil.
Okay, maybe more than I thought, that delay. Administrator, the president wants to cut your budget. How have you been responding to that?
Look, the president has set, I think, very important priorities as far as defense and homeland security, law enforcement, and so I think all agencies across the federal government are going to have to prioritize within their mission to help make sure that we fund those other activities appropriately. And Neil, I think that as we look at our priorities as an agency, looking at those regions across the country, how we can do a better job partnering with the states to help save money as we protect the air and the water in this country, is something we can do, and we'll do so in a way that makes sure that we protect that core mission and achieve good outcomes.
You said earlier that you want to address some of these new fuel standards that will be going into effect in stages and over the next few years. What did that mean, that you want to rescind them, delay them? What?
Well, Neil, as you know, the CAFE standards, as they're called, there was a midterm review that was supposed to take place in November of 2018. The last administration, on the eve of President Obama leaving the White House, that comment period closed at the end of December, and within 10 days, they issued their final statement with respect to those reviews. Unheard of as far as timing. Those weren't due until November of 2018. So what needs to be done is that we listen to those across the spectrum in industry, consumers, and others to make sure that those targets that have been set are properly evaluated and not hastened or accelerated to truncate the process. So there's going to be an announcement on that, I think, very, very soon, an important announcement about how we're going to address those CAFE standards. But for our perspective, process matters. The process was truncated, and it needs to be respected so that all voices are heard.
It sounds that they'll be at least extended or delayed.
I think that original timeline, Neil, of November of 2018 is an important timeline and one that should be respected.
Sir, you've also called into question the Paris Agreement. It was sort of a climate deal. Most of the big nations signed on to it. You questioned whether that was a valid deal, but it got people wondering, does the new EPA administrator believe that man is behind climate change and a warming Earth?
Well, Neil, the Paris discussion that occurred, there were things about that I think from a process perspective should be concerning to us all. One, it was an agreement that if it truly was enforceable and something that should be respected by all the nations that were participating, it should have been treated as a treaty and should have gone through the treaty process. It did not, as you know. But more importantly, in my view, it's right to have the discussion internationally, I believe. Secretary Tillerson and I've actually talked about that personally and privately. But what happened in Paris, Neil, was a bad deal for this country. You know, this country front-loaded its costs to address those CO2 targets that were established, while China and India backloaded their costs from 2030 and beyond. That's representative of not putting America first, and that's why I think it's important for us to make sure that as we go forward on that issue, that we put the domestic policy of this country at center, where we can find a pro-jobs, pro-growth agenda, while at the same time having a pro-environment focus as well.
So are you walking away from that agreement, sir?
Well, that's actually a State Department decision, Neil. That's not something the EPA was a signatory to.
If you had your brother's administrator, what would you do?
The State Department. I think that make sure that whatever discussions occur internationally respect the processes, that if agreements are made, that they go through the treaty process with the U.S. Senate, and secondly, that America first the decisions made are in conjunction with other nations across the globe. China and India contribute to the CO2 issue much greater than this country as far as us finding the balance between our economy, jobs, and our CO2 footprint, as you know, is actually at pre-1994 levels. That's largely because of the conversion to natural gas and the innovation of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. So we do it better than anybody in the world as far as finding that balance, Neil. To go to Paris or another location, engage in international discussion and not recognize that and put America second behind China and India as far as finding that balance is not the right approach.
Finally, sir, and I apologize again for this delay. It must be exasperating for you as it is for me. But do you look at the warming Earth or whatever? Because I think you're on record as saying you see the data, you see the Earth warming up. You just question whether man has had a role in that. Am I assessing your position accurately that you have doubts?
It's not a question about whether human
it?
activity impacts global warming. Yeah, it's not a question, and the delay is something challenging here, Neil, but it's not a delay. It's not an issue about whether man is contributing in some way to global warming. It's measuring with precision the amount of human activity. There are many causes that contribute to global warming, and I think that as we look at that issue, we need to recognize that measuring it with precision is very challenging. But at the same time, Neil, it's also important to ask the question, does the EPA have the tools in the toolbox to address that issue, even if that is, quote unquote, something that we get beyond the debate about how much man contributes to it? You know, Congress has never spoken on this issue. You have a Supreme Court decision in 2007. You have an endangerment finding in 2009. There's not been a legislative response at making sure that the EPA is actually equipped to respond to this statutorily. That's something that can't be dismissed and something that needs to be discussed as we go forward.
Finally, sir, you talked about the tools to address this. Well, environmentalists are concerned that if your boss, the president, wants to cut your budget, you will have fewer tools to do just that. And they're worried about that. What do you tell them?
Well, look, I mean, the core mission of the agency of protecting our land, air, and water is going to happen. You know, the EPA is very instrumental in supporting water infrastructure across this country. That's very important. The Superfund sites, the brownfield programs that we see that have created revitalization in certain cities and urban markets across the country has been a tremendous success. We have much attainment issues, Neil, to improve our attainment under those criteria pollutants under Title I. All those things are important for us to do as a country, and we will do those things. At the same time that we do those, we're going to strike the balance between a pro-growth agenda and a pro-environment agenda. We can do that. We've done it historically, and we can do it again.
All right. Administrator, thank you very, very much. We appreciate taking the time. My apologies again for our audio issues.